Good evening.
She was at open house. I just saw her.
Yeah, Miss Person West is en route. Yep, we're on air.
Good evening and welcome to the North Rock School Board special meeting where the Dr. Gregory Pulaski is the proud superintendent. At this time, we're open for public comments. Public comments. Public comments. If there are no public comments at this time, we ask Ms. Colquitt to call the roll.
Mrs. Williams?
Here.
Mrs. Wonka?
Here.
Dr. Rivers? Mrs. McLean?
Here.
Mrs. Temple? Ms. Person West? And Mr. Still?
Here.
Okay, where am I now? I done messed up.
Executive session. Executive.
At this time, we will go have executive closed session. The executive closed session per North Rock School District Policy 1.14A stating that private or closed discussions by the board may occur as part of a regular or special board meeting. Executive sessions may be held only for the purpose of considering employment, appointment, promotion, demotion, discipline, or the resignation of an employee, or to discuss the matter of pupil punishment if requested by a parent or legal guardian. No resolution, agreement, or motion considered in the executive session shall be legally binding unless the board reconvenes in the public session and presents the item for vote of the membership. Further, Arkansas Code Title 25, Chapter 19, Section 106(2)C states, the specific purpose of the executive session shall be announced in public before going into executive session. Please join me in the executive closed session for the discussion of the following matters: employment, appointment, promotion, demotion, discipline, or the resignation of an employee. They say I'm not signed in. Dr. Pelosi.
Madam President, members of our Board of Education, the first information item at the request of the board is our last discussion about our capital improvement projects. The board had requested Taggart Architects to come back, just like we did at our workshop, to specifically look at the design elements of both the middle school and Old Main. So with that, I would like to call my colleague, Mr. Brown, Mr. Tessman, Mr. Kay from Taggart Architects, and our favorite financial advisor, Mr. Beardsley.
You forgot to vote for the employment.
It'll be next in action.
All of this.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Gentlemen, welcome. It's good to see you all again.
Thank you. Good to see you.
It's good to be seen.
No, come on. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Mr. Brown, you want to start us out?
Yes. All right. So we brought back the information we had last week in addition to the information that was presented at the board workshop in February. And there was a specific request for the information that was presented by Taggart Architects at the February board workshop on the phasing of the middle school project and also the COE project over at Old Main. So we've got that information to review with you tonight. So I'll turn it over to Brom from Taggart, and we'll begin with that.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam President and members of the board. I'm Brom Cahey with Taggart Architects, and y'all are familiar with the presentation back in February, but I wanted to and was asked to breeze through this again to give you some familiarity with the project. So let me take this and I'll stand up. And I've got a few notes, but I'm going to just kind of breeze through as I can. So this is the middle school. This is a Google Earth view, and y'all to get familiarity with the campus. Parking lot north and south and on the east. And so the way we address this, kind of given some backstory, is that the existing campus, there's some issues that we've heard from by the students and the parents and the faculty of what doesn't work for this. And some of the items that I made a list, that the site seems overbuilt. It feels like a big school. It's closed off around the perimeter, and parents don't know where to go. They don't know where the entry pieces are. There's limited light into the classroom. The farm component is way up here in the corner. The sixth grade outdoor activity is off and down the hill and not visible from the school. And the public finds it hard to get around. So some of the after-hours activities are in the gymnasiums. So they have to come through this wall to get to the gymnasium, and also the cafeteria has after-hours events that you have to come through the campus to get to. So that was a problem. We don't need a huge auditorium anymore. The building is aged out and is cost too much to maintain. And there's 2 gymnasiums, and that's too many, and they're also aged out. And so what we want to do is appreciate this opportunity to make this better. And so some of the things that we focused on is to have a site that's more clear, that's easily understandable, that that we create a varied learning opportunity with the buildings, using both the buildings and the courtyard as a learning opportunity. We allow the people to become engaged with the courtyard, so these buildings will open up to the courtyard, and there'll be a more active interaction between the outdoors and the indoors. We turn the classrooms into learning pods, and so instead of this big classroom that was built in the 60s, even last 50s, we have little smaller areas that the students will feel more individualized. And
It wasn't the 50s.
So it was 50 years ago. So
50 years, maybe. Yeah, it wasn't in the 50s though.
yeah. So
School opened in 70. What? It was 71.
I can't.
yeah,
Long time.
long time. So, but the model was a long corridor with classrooms on each side and just no autonomy. You just walk down a long corridor to your classroom. But now we'd like to develop neighborhoods where you have small pods of science wings or English wings, that there can be a smaller group that people can identify as an individual, and not just a long hallway. We wanted to fix the entrance parts, make the entrances to the buildings more visible, more inviting, more about who we are as technology and openness, and then have a common space for teachers and parents and students to collaborate. Right now, there's not any spaces in the buildings for them to all get together and do a lesson, or to have an open space where others can come in and join the conversation. And then we wanted to show off the specialty classrooms, like the music and the library and the technical computer science and things. We wanted to highlight those from the outside and have the parents connect to those specialty things, because those are the items that are going to attract our students to this school district or to this school. So the phasing part of it. So we think this campus is the best place for this, because it's in a centralized location. It's got easily accessed parking and drives. It's been here forever, and so this is where we said, yeah, this is where the school needs to be. If we're thinking about other sites or thinking about other locations, it needs to come here. But there's a problem in doing that. We've got kids going to school here, and so to have both the ideal location and new buildings, we've come up with a phasing plan that will allow the kids to not have to go to trailers. That is the least disruption for the parents and staff and kids, but it's going to take longer. This process, once you phase it out, and you'll see the different steps, once you phase it out, it will take longer than building one new school at one time and moving into it. So these are the identifiers for the buildings: 7th, 8th grade, theater, 6th grade, dining, and gymnasium. So the first phase includes demoing the existing theater and the band rooms, and there's some classrooms in this building, demoing this first. And what that will allow is this site to be developed for the 7th and 8th grade building. So it's a 2-story building, 7th grade on one floor, 8th grade on the next, or you could even go 7th grade and 8th grade in a 2-story space. And again, as I described this, we haven't really designed anything. These are just concepts and just ideas. We need to spend time with focus groups, with y'all, with teachers and parents and students, to define what they're looking at, what their needs are, and how they'd like to be arranged. So this, yes, ma'am.
With this phase, with the demo and then constructing, what time frame is that for this one building?
So this one, the demo would take, and I've got that card. The
Could
demo,
While you're doing it, could you not show it on the, we got it on our computer, and if someone is sitting out there, they can't see it.
okay.
But it's
Miss-
programmed.
Yeah, Mr. Nannon can pull it up.
He can
to
have it
follow
pull
along.
it up so
Yep.
the community can see what's going on.
Let's see.
I think it's that one that says
It's number-
NLRSD campus plan.
3, 4.
Yeah, that's
There
it.
you go.
And I'm on the
Thank you.
third slide, yeah. Go
Good
right
idea.
there. And then yeah, then go one more, demo. Yes. So that's slide demoing the existing theater and the classroom, which has some choir rooms in it. So the next one, that's the 7th, 8th grade building. So demo, and these are just our estimates. Demo of that theater building will take 3 or 4 months, and then it's about a 16-month process for the new building to be built. It's probably a little bit like a year and a half for that 7th, 8th grade. But meanwhile, all the students are still in their classrooms in the 7th, 8th grade building, and there's, this is the area of construction. So they all stay pretty limited and pretty concise to one area that's going to be affected by construction. And so the next phase, we demo the 7th, 8th grade, the next slide. Yeah, demo the 7th, 8th grade building, and then or let me back up. The students move into their new building, 7th, 8th grade, and then we demo the existing 7th, 8th grade building. And then in its place, we locate the 6th grade building. We build that, and again, 3 or 4 month demo of the existing building, 16 months to build the new. This is a 1-story building, so it may not take as long, but this is a 1-story 6th grade building, and then the 6th graders move into this when it's completed. So they're in their existing building until this is done. And then the next phase, we demo the 6th grade building. So this building is removed, and it becomes the space for the gym and possibly the shelter building. So this is the multi-purpose gymnasium, community space, has a front porch on it. So this is a component that takes these existing gyms and repurposed them here. So
Mr. Kate,
yes.
can you just clarify for the public the shelter requirement that's new, that has to be considered into new construction?
Yes, so I talked with the state fire marshal and the North Little Rock fire marshal to get clarity on a meeting that they had with the state education director. And from that meeting, there's probably a lot more complication, but in summary, any new building that has over 50 people in it will need to have a safe room. So, or be within 1,000 feet of a safe room. So, for example, we have this building was once thought of as the gymnasium and the shelter building. So that idea is like it's 1,000 feet, and we'll make sure everybody can get there, but 1,000 feet to get to the shelter. So this, you provide one shelter for within 1,000 feet for all the occupants of the facility, or in each one of these, you can provide a hardened area for those occupants. And so the decision is to be made, do you want a central or a single location, or do you want each of these to have a hardened room? And so I think some of and Brad may help out, but may know more, but the debate was, how do you calculate how big these things need to be? And so the state has a quantifier about how many people can be in the classroom, which is their max is 28, sometimes 30 for older grades, and 850 square feet. But the building code uses 20 net, which would bring you to 34, 38 for that same space. And so the decision was that they have to follow the building code of 20 net. And so for our classroom spaces, it's 20 net for that 850 square feet. And so we calculate all the occupants for the classrooms, for the vocational spaces, for the offices, for staff and so forth. And those are our occupant loads that we have to create a safe space for, this hardened tornado shelter. And the area for that is 5 square feet per person. So you have, you know, you have your occupant load, and you multiply that by 5, and that tells you how big your hardened or tornado shelter, FEMA shelter has to be built for. And so either you build it the size of the occupants of this building, or you build it for the whole campus and make sure it's 1,000 feet. So that's something that, you know, is an option. It's something to find out the cost benefit from, the safety benefit of, and make a decision on.
Thank you, sir.
Sure. And while we're on the safe rooms, we also touched on the Center of Excellence in Old Main that we'll talk about later. So while we're on it, the fire marshal said that new buildings are triggered this safe room, this FEMA shelter. But existing buildings, unless you exceed 50% of the construction value of the building, you know, unless you work up all the systems that you're touching, and if they don't exceed 50% of that scope of work, then you do not have to put a safe room in. And so I clarified this morning. I was like, okay, is there some formula? Do I have to price out this, you know, Old Main to find out how much it would cost now? And he said, no, they rely on the design professional to come up with an argument and come up with a percentage that you're going to be affecting. And so like in Old Main, if we just do some renovations, but don't move big load-bearing walls or punch through floors or do some major structural work, I think it's going to take a lot to get to a 50% threshold. But again, like I've been saying, it's up to the board and the community what you'd like to do, because that's just a minimum. You can always, like in the basement of Old Main, those walls, like Mr. Brown was saying, are 12 inches or 24 inches thick. And so it wouldn't be difficult if you wanted that basement area or some area in the basement to be a hardened space, a FEMA room with specialized doors and so forth, if you wanted that building to have some protection. So that, again, is another discussion that we can have with you and the community, what you want to do. But technically, it wouldn't necessarily trigger the hardened, safe FEMA room for that building, because we don't exceed the 50% of the value of the construction. Okay. Let's see. So after the gymnasium's built, our shelter building or whatever, we demo the existing gymnasiums. There's upper and lower gymnasium. And in its place becomes the new outdoor dining for the cafeteria, becomes a farm. So we're moving the farm that's up here in the corner to a more centralized courtyard location, so it can be used by more people. It can be more visible. It can become part of this community of learning. And then also it's adjacent to the existing dining that's going to stay, because this dining room has a brand new kitchen in it. It remodeled the cafeteria part, so it's a very nice building, and we'll continue to use that. But they can grow, have in their farm, call it like farm to table, or
Ag science.
yeah, and be able to go to the cafeteria and do the cooking and displaying, and that would be a cool learning activity, something they can develop. And then 6th grade has an outdoor space here, you know, where those 2 gyms used to be. So basketball and all the outdoor activities, and it has a proximity to the 6th grade that's better than it is now. Down the hill, there's no windows on the side, but all of this focuses into the courtyard to be able to have 6th grade play being monitored a lot better. Part of that, didn't touch on, but part of the 7th, 8th grade building being demoed and the auditorium being demoed is the creation of this administration wing and also the specialty services. So in this pod, this purple pod, we have our choirs, our media center, our technology computer technology, the East
East program.
East program. So that's on our most prominent corner. And so we want that to be a visible, inviting opportunity for that technology and for that those kind of special classrooms to be highlighted. Because those kind of things bring in people, if they know that you've got a nice technology wing, that will be an invitation for new prospective students. And so the administration wing is here, and it will be built along with the 7th and 8th grade. So immediately, the administrations have a place to go once their 6th grade or 8th grade is demoed. So this is the administration building, kind of in the knuckle between the 6th and 7th, 8th grade building, and will be used as a central location for all 3 grades. And then again, this is the public space with choir, media center. So so some of the big ideas, these are just design thoughts that we had to give you some idea of what we're thinking that these spaces could be like. These images aren't ours specifically, but they give a feel of what, kind of what we're thinking, and, it's better with a picture than with words. So the entry porches, it was important for us to highlight, where do you go? Where do you enter the building? And so we have a large feature for the entry, one that's open and inviting. And we had a discussion last time in February talking about all the glass and the safety and security. And so we spent some time talking about those issues. And so those still remain. We still need to talk through those and find out all the design options to keep this kind of feel. But those options and that kind of criteria is certainly need to be discussed.
Real quick, for the purple, for the, where you were saying about the East program and the admin building, is that like a combined admin building? Is both the 6th and the 7th grade gonna be there, or will each, section have their own admin space?
Yeah.
Or it's not really highlighted there?
Yeah, so the idea is just admin is in this,
Right there,
is
okay.
in this pod. And we have the option to either, divide it up into 2 sections or 3 sections or 2 levels. So we haven't really gotten to those weeds yet on how that's organized.
Okay.
But the thought was it's a centrally located, it's in the knuckle, it's easily accessed from both the 6th grade building and from the 7th, 8th as part of this, communication knuckle. So we wanted it somewhat centralized, but it would probably be focused on, one part of it is 6th grade alone, and one part of it is 7th, 8th grade, similar to where they are now in separate buildings, just because the kids that are there, the parents that come there, need to say that I'm a 6th grader, this is my administration. So we probably want to keep that hierarchy of 6th grade and 7th, 8th grade. And that's best done by separating these entities in some way.
Okay.
The classroom communities, again, thinking about them being nodes, so you can see by the architecture that these are little pods they're little communities. And so within that corridor, they have their own identity. So maybe the outside has a special feature that says, oh, this is my room, or this is where my brother or sister goes. So just some way to identify in each pod as its own entity. Between those pods, it gives us a chance to bring the kids together in a more of a community atmosphere. And so we've got these learning stairs that are open to the entry point and then open to the courtyard behind. And so this is a lit area. It's a big area, has places where students can collaborate and get together in small groups. It's a place for parents to come and meet with teachers. And it's a place where they can wait for the school bus or wait for rides later. So this is a connecting device between the entry porch and the courtyard, and then between those two knuckled neighborhoods. So that's an image similar of what we're thinking. Something active, exciting, bright, lots of movement. So,
What's the plan for the area where the track is?
track that would stay as a PE, kind of the same function as it is now. I don't know who uses that much. I've seen classes or during lunch maybe they go out there, but you don't have a football team, and so I don't know if there's any organized sports or soccer or I'm not sure who you would have used that, but it turns into just a multi-individual use kind of freestyle kind of thing.
There is soccer, and a lot of people play soccer in the inside of that. Do we own the property right up?
Yes. Yeah, I think.
See that? I mean, with soccer becoming so popular now, I mean, there's going to be definitely interest at the middle school for soccer field.
And don't quote me, Mr. Steele, but I think we own nearly almost 20 acres there.
All
is,
of that
is
over
the
there,
footprint.
including that wooded area.
Yeah, the wooded area behind there, the tennis courts. We can get a boundary line map, but I remember looking at that one time with Mr. Cahey. Am I right? We're close to
correct.
20.
That's correct. And one of the features, kind of differences from the campus now to this plan, this idea, is that right now it's the back of the gyms, and so you really
Right.
can't see what's going on in the fields. And so by removing those, and this is flat area like your basketball courts and cropland and things, we've opened that up to just to see the football field and the track, and so that becomes more connected to our courtyard and to our outdoor spaces, and conversely to our classroom spaces. And so I think that by opening this up, even though the grade difference is about 20 feet, I think that openness will still be a draw, and so perhaps this will be used more than it is now because you can't see it normally. So our hope is that we can make a better connection to that existing field.
Mr. Cahey, I'm just curious, what's the elevation change between the middle school proposal and that field that Mr. Steele is referencing? What's the change? Because I know we talked about building something over there, but it was too high.
Yeah, we're 20 feet, but almost 25 feet
Oh, wow.
difference between this and this track.
Wow,
And then
that's a lot.
within this, the parking lot and the courtyard is about another 10, 15 feet. We were looking at that today. And so the thought of this new campus being down here, the buildings would have to be closer and bigger, and it's such a difference in elevation that parking, you'd have to make this parking because the buildings would fill up all of this acreage here. Your parking would be 20 feet difference, so you'd have a series of ramps and things. The other thing we talked about is that this campus has adequate utilities, plumbing and water and sewer and so forth. So we can reuse those mains that are currently functioning for the facility. And also we don't have to rebuild any parking lots. So we can reuse these lots that are available and keep them running and keep them. So if we were
So
down-
the flooding issues are internal and not landscape.
right, yeah,
In the back of the gym where it floods.
yeah, we'd had a lot of issues with this courtyard flooding, and so we've done some drainage repair, and these buildings here were collecting all of the water and getting it on the other side of the building. And so whenever you move water from one side of the building to the other, you're going to have issues over time. And so I think by removing those components that were acting like a dam, we can do a better job of getting water out of this courtyard, and we won't have the flooding problems before. like one of the issues is this sixth grade building. We have our gymnasium on the lower level. And I've worked on projects trying to repair that buckled floor, and we put down another one with trench drains, and it's a problem. But so we've considered that by making this gymnasium location here, more central and not going down that hill where it acts as part of that funnel of water. So that water can be handled just naturally with grading. And so we think that, some of the issues that we've had with the drainage of the school will be helped by and will be addressed by these new plans.
Now, as far as the cafeteria, that's pretty much a newer building or more, renovated building.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
guess, right? So, because it looks very, very nice in there. And that was, what year was that done? Anybody know?
It was when all the elementary schools were done. I think it was
16.
Okay,
16.
so that was
16.
that last village run. Okay,
Yep.
so it was enough to kind of do some of the elementary schools that we needed and get this cafeteria and piecemeal the rest, right? Or Band-Aid it.
Yes, and I don't know under the specifics, but yes, the cafeteria, and then I also believe there's a wing in the sixth grade. Those have to remain because they're newer buildings. Everything else basically can be
Okay.
demolished and redesigned.
Yeah, in our sixth grade, going back to that demo plan, it has the existing sixth grade building, and then some 15 years ago or so, we built an addition, or we added on with I think it's a music room and some science rooms and home ec and some other classrooms from this, maybe an art room too. And those are not aged out, so we don't get any credit for those rooms. But where they're positioned is you really can't connect a new building to those and use those elements. So, I mean, we can certainly do that if it's the will to say, no, we can't tear this down. But where they're currently located, being tied to a building that's being demoed, we're not reusing that newer part of the sixth grade building as part of our concepts.
Okay.
And then this one, more of the big ideas is getting, we call it classrooms with vitamin D. Getting the classrooms having spaces out in the courtyard that are for the classrooms, so that there's both instruction inside with blackboards and things. Well, we don't have blackboards anymore, but I'm old. And then outside, you have a designated area for that same class to be present in the courtyard. So, thinking about what the benefit of light is and how people react to and appreciate that way of learning. So front door technology, going back to this is our masterpiece here. This is what draws. This is what a prospective parent will see first, is something that is sleek and nice and interesting, and tells them the story about the move towards new technology and having technology being unbounded by the district and the courses that we have to offer. So putting that on the corner as the first thing they see with this kind of imagery, we hope will say, people, perspectives will say, wow, this is what they're all about. And then more courtyard connections, even the administration, even these special, you can have a space outside that you do special programs, you can do special events and talent shows and things could all occur out here with a more connection to the courtyard. So right now, the courtyard is in such disrepair and it's so, kind of tough to be in because it's just all hard and it's just not a great place to spend time. We hope to change that character by having the buildings relate more to that. And so as you're in the courtyard, you're also in the building and vice versa. So we think that through the design and through the use plans, working with the staff and so forth, that we can make use of this really a nice could be a nice base. And in addition, like in that same vein, the gymnasium has a front porch, because there could be a meeting space for the community, for fundraisers and events throughout the year. So that's kind of the image that we have involved. And again, it is open, so you get a connection to the courtyard. It's a nice place to be a school. And then the farm to table, the last thing, moving it from the corner to here. We've talked some about that, but this is the idea. Row crops, raised crops, maybe a greenhouse. We've done that before. And then inside you can have home ec rooms and cooking spaces, but also can have that connection to the cafeteria to know what, farm to table or class to table, farm to school. So, so that's cool.
Outside to inside.
Yeah, right. So any questions? That's it for the middle school. Yes, ma'am.
So if I'm calculating right, it takes about 2 years to demo one section and then build something new there.
Yes.
Would there be any overlap, like when you're constructing something new? I don't know if there's a time that it overlaps where you're demoing the next thing, or are we looking at 2, 4, 6 years
Yeah,
to do this?
our rough draft, just on paper, is a 4-year process. And there will be some overlaps because the gymnasium, they could do that during the summer when it's not going to be used. So we can demo and shorten these timelines. And so by looking at the school schedule and when you're not in class, summertime work, that schedule can be shortened. But yeah, we have basically it's 2 years for the classrooms to be built. 1 year for the 6th grade, 1 year for the 8th grade. And then with all the other components, it will work out to linearly in about 4 years.
So then I have a question over here. What is the start date and end date that the money must be spent?
Well, the end date, excuse me, the project completion date is 7/20/2027. But those dates are waivable by the division in extenuating circumstances. That means the division can waive that end date till later. Now, because this campus is pretty much locked in, landlocked, I think that would have a good chance of being approved for a waiver.
Mr. Testman, the deadline there is for the partnership funding portion, correct?
Yes.
So the 20.8 million that the state has awarded in partnership would be have to adhere to that deadline. But if our construction goes further and we've expended the 20.8 million,
How the reimbursement process works is a percentage of completion of the overall project. So the reimbursement, your final reimbursement won't be due until you actually pay your architect and your construction manager their last payment. So whenever the project's done, that's whenever the money is completely released.
Well, in that same vein, and you're going to get us a breakdown of every building, right? Not just a total. So just say we come up a little short. Can that money from the partnership, can that be used on one of those buildings, or does it have to be the entire project?
It is the entire project.
So what entire project did we turn in? Because some of this is kind of more than we initially talked about in the application process.
The required POR
Yes.
requirements were for classroom spaces, the special music rooms, computer rooms, those kind of things, and the gymnasium. So you can help me fill in the gaps, but yeah, it's classroom, administration, VOTEC, and gymnasium. And so,
So those are the things we're obligated to with the state funding?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
It's just based on your enrollment. It's a program, and it kicks out how many classrooms you need for how many students you have, and that's the bare minimum. It's just a cookie cutter space allocation with minimum size standards for each space. So,
And when did you say the money would be allocated?
it's allocated right now. I mean, if we have to, I have to have.
I mean,
January.
when will we get it?
Well, whenever you start making your initial payment request, let's say you hire an architect, the architect does $100,000 worth of work, and the district wants to get reimbursed for the $100,000. Well, I think your portion was about, I'm just going to guess here, your share was what, 60 or was it 30% of the, wait here, hold on, I have it right here.
So, Mr. Steele, just to clarify the process, the state is going to reimburse the school district as you make payment. So whatever percentage they're paying, each time you make an invoice payment, you're going to pay 100% of the invoice that's due, submit the invoice back to the state, and get your percentage back from them. So they're with you every step of the way. You don't get to spend their money first or last.
Or last.
They're going to pay their share throughout the whole project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You want to move on to Old Main? Just the, oh, okay.
Before we leave that, can we talk a little bit more about the 4 years? What happens if we don't do the 4 years? I know you said there's possibility to get a waiver to continue, like if we haven't got all the construction done by whatever that date is in 2027, or
Your first question was about 4 years, or what was it?
4 years.
Oh, 4 years.
the 4 years.
Sorry about that. Yes, if you're in the process of doing the school and you cannot complete it during that 4 years, we submit a request to the division with our reasonable exception while we cannot do it, and the division will decide if they will extend that 4 years.
If they will extend it.
Yes,
How
the deadline.
how much of an extension do you usually get?
It's based on how much we're asking for. I'm not sure the historical record of what is the most that's been granted. Or
That's what I was wondering. Is there a maximum, or you could just ask for a
you look
6
at
month
it.
extension and then ask for
Yeah,
another
if you're
6
looking at
month
they're saying,
extension?
okay, where our project is about 9 months out, can you just go in and say, can we have a 9-month extension?
Yes, it has to be a reasonable cause. I mean, if you try to do it 5 years, they're going to say,
Yeah.
I don't think that's
Right.
acceptable. But
Do you think you could
question.
help the school district and go ahead and ask for the waiver up front? Because we know this is a multi-year project, could take up to 6 years. We know we have 4 years to spend the money. Would they go ahead and grant the district the waiver now so that you know on the front end that your plan is acceptable?
we can ask.
Okay. Question? Oh, Taggart,
yes, ma'am.
I would like to ask you 2 questions, please. Everything will be built in stagnants, right?
Staged, yes, ma'am, that's
Okay,
correct.
Next thing, while we're doing that, how would you all consider housing students? You turn down one piece, but then have you all figured out a way in your designs how that process would be used? You're taking away part of the building that would be used for studies, academics.
Yes, so the key to making that ripple effect is by getting rid of the auditorium first, and then we would build a new building for the 6th or the 7th and 8th grade. And so when it's done, those students move into their new building. And so they're not out in portables, they're not in construction zones, but whenever that building, the 7th, 8th grade building is fully complete, they'll move into that new facility, and then we'll take the one they were in, demo it, and get rid of that. And then we start building that site back to be the 6th grade building. And so when it's completely done, those students move into their new building. And so they've been in their building all during construction and until it's completely done. And books are in, chairs are in, and then they move to the new sixth grade building. And so there's not going to be any time where a student will, be temporarily housed in a mobile trailer or, displaced into another classroom. They stay where they are until their new space is complete, and then they in total move to their new building.
Okay, next question. I keep saying a field and track behind this. That will be there?
Yes, ma'am.
We'll have one on that property behind the property that we have.
No, that will remain, and we'll use it as we can do new programs, and it becomes connected to the new school complex. So yeah, that will remain at a multi-use field for soccer, for PE, for a track event.
The old part, I know it's back there. I guess I was assuming that's where it would still be
Yes, ma'am.
developed. Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
This is just a big idea.
Sure.
It's not reality, okay?
No, I'm out of the
Let's
box
just
all
say
the
that
time.
we had a space. I'm trying to get a comparison here. Let's say we had a space to build the new middle school, and you could just build it all at once. How long would that take?
Yeah, so my guess is just a gut feel that building is comparing it to the high school, that was a 2-year building. So I think it's upwards of 2 years. And I'm thinking that because the sites, we've looked at this question, what other sites is there 20 acres of that we could consolidate to put this building on? And the ones we found were limited. There was just a couple of spots, and they were mostly at the edges of town, away from where we live. But they would have to have new utilities done, and so the site work stuff takes the most time when you start a project. And so getting utilities and getting the dirt work leveled and all this, that would increase the time. So I'm just a gut feel is probably 2 years or so for
So
construction.
2 to 3 years,
Yes, ma'am.
maybe versus 4.
Yeah, I believe that's
Okay.
the case.
Okay.
I think that's a very good question. We should
Yep.
have that as some kind of option, at least to look.
Yeah, and we were tasked with doing that, and we met on that option. We found contiguous 20 acres out near, was it
Is it
Amboy?
Amboy out
Yeah,
just
near the
beyond
Amboy
Amboy.
neighborhood. There was 20 continuous acres that was, available to, I think there was one parcel that we would have to negotiate a sell for. But it was at the edge of town, it was on a busy street already, Amboy. The highway to Amboy is
McCarthy.
already busy. And it wasn't a familiar place for residents, especially if they're coming from Crestwood.
Are you talking about a temporary site? Is that what you're
No, I
referring
think
to?
she was
No.
talking about a whole new site for a whole
Oh,
new
a
school.
whole new site.
Yeah.
No, I thought
Yeah.
you was meaning move the
No.
Oh.
students and then for 2 years
Yeah.
in another site and then,
Oh, no, I understood the question to be, if we built this somewhere else, built all this campus
oh, yeah.
somewhere else, how long would that take, and where would that be? And what are the
Two.
ramifications of that?
Just too costly. You have to buy the
Yeah,
property,
and
then
that's that site, that's a big part of the city.
Yes.
So I want to stay
Yes.
there.
Right.
I was thinking about moving the school
Moving
somewhere
the
so we could
students out.
expedite, instead of 4 years, 2 years.
Yeah, let's
4
talk
years is a
about
long
that.
time.
What would that be?
So, one of the estimates that we did included portables for 7 months, 10 months, and you could do 2 schools at the same time. But that would mean for that construction period, the students would be in portables. And that's absolutely an option. We've got a lot of parking lot space there. We've got spaces, football field and on the north side and the south side. So, we had a price for doing that. I think it was, about $1 million for that time period for housing students in portables. But we thought that, we're still going to be acquiring students. You were still trying to appeal to students that are graduating, trying to keep those. And so by keeping the existing facility somewhat intact and, without chaos would be a benefit. 'Cause
What would
the
it,
Senate-
what would it gain us in time-wise if we did that?
Yeah, you could do 2 schools at one time. So you'd save a year, maybe 2 years, probably a year.
At least a
3.
year,
At
right?
least a year. Because we
Okay.
could demo the 2 buildings and build the 2 buildings. So the demo would be, let's say, 6 months for both buildings, and then have both buildings built continuously for 16 months, 18 months.
So,
So
yeah,
about a 2
so
year
kind of an
period.
in-between is what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think that'd be worth looking at if we wouldn't lose too many kids. Yeah, I don't know, Ms. Walker, what comes to mind for me is, that it's really out there. You said big idea, so I could have one. McCain Mall for temporary. That parking lot back there, what used to be Sears, that building, you'd have the furniture store now, and then that huge parking lot that very few people use in the back of McCain Mall. While you're doing one building, you could have, that would maybe save a year.
I think that's absolutely part of our, you could task us with finding feasibility studies of those options. So, yeah.
I think if we're going to explore and think big, I would feel more comfortable personally taking care of Old Main first, switching it up, and then moving children into Old Main while we take care of the 7th and 8th grade and 6th grade campus. In my mind, we're utilizing what we already have. We're recycling, renewing. We're not spending additional funds to misplace or jar our children, but yet we still have them centrally located. Just my 2 cents. Just my 2 cents.
I think what I can conclude from this is that there's going to be some disruption, one way or the
Yeah.
other. So
Yes, ma'am.
it's
So how do you minimize that? How do you minimize the
Yeah.
disruption?
right.
The best option to.
Next,
Okay.
Old Main.
Yes, ma'am. So our ideas for Old Main are, we've gone, Mr. Steele had a committee put together, and I was fortunate to be on that thought process. And, now full circle, the best way to renovate and to bring life to Old Main is it wants to be a school. So let's make it a school. So the Center of Excellence had the idea of using the school as part of their space, and they have from 300 to 700 students, and that's kind of the sweet spot for Old Main. And so we're really excited about that opportunity for the life of Old Main. So we put together some ideas on how to organize the space. Again, imagery and some thought processes on design. But how we would organize Old Main is on the first floor, we would have administration in this purple, special education in this purple, and then we would have multipurpose and seminars and multipurpose and seminars. And the walls basically would stay very similar to where they are now. Administration is located here, so we don't have to do much for that. These are large classrooms. I don't know the exact square foot, but I think they're larger than 850. But so we would refinish new ceilings and floors and tiles and technology, lighting, all these things to make this as good as the new high school. One thing that was interesting is the media component, and so you'll see this element throughout the floors. And so one thing that kind of connects all of the Center of Excellence is technology. And so we're using the media commons as a technology node. And so it starts on the first floor at that mezzanine area. So we kind of take out that mezzanine area and develop that as a media technology core. And as we go to the second floor, we would have core classrooms where they are located now. So we just fix up and face up the classrooms. We'd have flex spaces on the two front pieces, science labs in the large rooms on either end. And then we would have, again, this media commons. And you can see by the images here, in your slide, that it's a multi-level volume. It connects all of the floors. You can enter it from first, second, third floor, and it becomes a space and a spine that connects all of the spaces. So some of our images are, you have little breakout rooms. You can have your stacks are there, your books and computers, and then it can overlook into this auditorium space, which is this historic, really nice volume that we don't have much of anymore. So this is the imagery for that overlooking core. Then on the third floor, we would have core classrooms where they are now currently on both sides. We'd have a student lounge on the third floor, and then that media commons develops even larger and is a place where students can go to do their projects and do research and things. So here's some images of the student lounge that would be in that core center spot that's very visible in the kind of historic Old Main. Then in the basement, this is where we get into the heavy sciences. So we've got our rooms down there are much larger. It used to be the media center. So we have the technology and computer science in that large space. We'd have engineering in the back here. This is the level that we have access or can build access for lifts and have a dock maybe if they have larger pieces of equipment as part of their engineering program. We've kind of figured out a way to get that into the space. It's very difficult because this is at a half level, about 6 feet below the finished ground. So that's a problem, but we've got some concepts behind that. And then we would have health science on this side. So I think now is TV production and a large boardroom used to be here. So this would be the health science, and we've got some imagery of what that is, and the health science unit back on this side. So strong computer technology and health service and health science on this wing. And then again, the media commons, that all encompassing spine of media and technology. And then the final one is, the best space in North Little Rock is the penthouse. I don't know what it used to be. There's all these stories of what it used to be, but it's like the best place in North Little Rock. And so we envision this to be the BattleBot zone. And so we can have BattleBot fields or I don't know what you call them, like rings, battle rings.
Yeah,
And
BattleBot Arena.
BattleBot Arena. So you have smoke and you have lasers and music and all these things, and other schools can come here and we can beat their robots up. It could be
Competitive.
Just with
Get
due
Scott
respect.
to be the judge.
So this image is the picture is what that space could be. Referees and keeping things calm, but all this chaos and things going on in this great penthouse space. So that's an idea that we're excited about seeing.
If I may, if you remember at the end of the year, we had the 3 students from the COE that presented on the solar panel. They were presenting in my office, and we shared that, and their eyes got real big and said, Dr. P, we want to come back and be teachers because we want to go play in the BattleBot Arena. They were very excited about it. What a neat concept.
So thinking about a draw, that's what draws students to be here.
Sure.
Is, fun, energetic, exciting things that just build a school. That's really cool.
Now, is that for $5 million?
So I don't think we've priced this lately. We priced it when we were looking at it being an office building, and I think it came in about $15 million. But that had a lot of wall redos. That had a lot of, so we think that we're still within that envelope, and but we haven't talked with anybody to price this. But we think that because of what we were thinking earlier with your committee, that we can stay within the 15, and then the state would have an additional amount that could go to that. So, you know, we've got to do complete renovations of the electrical system and data system. They've got a new plant, so that's beneficial. You know, we spent money to do a new plant in the courtyard between the two schools, and so we've got that to benefit us. But we've got to do new ductwork and things, new infrastructure, and then new carpet and tile and ceiling tiles and renovations and things. So it's going to be a bit, and it's going to be the most messy of the projects because we've got to tear out what's there first and then build back. This may be the longest, you know, per school than even building a new one, potentially.
So what's your time frame estimate on that?
So this one, I would think it's probably a 2-year process, just to factor in demoing. You know, we have to look at abatement, so I don't know where we are on asbestos or lead. But that would have to be removed first. And then we would demo out the existing building, kind of gut it, and then come back with new. So, and with all of the extensive electrical and mechanical systems, you know, it's like starting over, but you're having to work inside of the belly of a ship. So I think it's a good 2-year project.
Question. I heard what Ms. Walkham said about, you know, perhaps it'd be more, if it was feasible, but I guess this question is to this gentleman right here.
Mr. Testman.
If there was a choice that the board said, well, let's do Old Main first, that way the kids would have a place to
Ms.
be.
Williams, to speak into the mic.
Okay, I'm sorry. Where would the kids have okay, I'll go back again. How would we stand? I heard what Ms. Walkham said about in that we're trying to build a middle school, and Old Main is a part of something, if it was approved, that if we, the board, decided, so hey, let's go ahead and renovate Old Main first so that we could have those kids in one place rather than being transit continuously, and whereas would you do 2 projects at one time? How would that affect us, if at all, sir?
Well, here's the issue. We haven't even put in an application yet for the Old Main. That is due March 1st, 2024. And we wouldn't find out if we were approved for the project until around September or December of 2024. And then we wouldn't know if we were funded until May of 2025. So that Old Main project would happen way after the start of the middle school.
Ms. Walkham, if I understood you though, was your idea, instead of putting portables or going to McCain Mall, what could we do to Old Main to move the 6th, 7th, or 8th graders into that facility so that all the buildings could be demoed and expedite the construction process?
Yes, it's not that we needed to do the complete renovation. I understand we don't have the money. We literally do not have the application. I understand that. But it is already a school. It is already built for a school. It already has classrooms in it. What would it take for us to utilize that space in order for us not to jar our children more so? Prior, back in 2012 when we started the first projects, we had Poplar, and we moved our kids over there. I remember my child being there 3 different times throughout her lifespan here within our district. Nothing wrong with that, but we utilized that space is the point of that. Well, we no longer can do that. We no longer have an additional building to utilize outside of Old Main, in my opinion. I don't see us having any more. We sold Park Hill, we sold Amboy, we sold everything else. So there's no space for us to put our babies, and we need to put our babies somewhere during this process. So that's just my thought.
A question, then, Mr. Beardsley, when we're talking about the possibilities of even trying to build a school, that who does this report so we can get more in depth to see what if a millage passed, what would it cover? You know, I think that needs to be heard again. Mr. Brown, I see your report down here. Is that in your report? Mr. Beers always give us the time, place, and date. But I think your report would be of essence to say, if a millage was passed, this is what would happen, and this is what it would take care of. Is that on you next?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Hunter, would you bring up that PowerPoint? Capital, wait a second. Try the capital improvement project list.
Yep, that's it.
So we have had discussions on the projects that are listed here. It would be the new middle school project, which we've covered tonight, the renovation of Old Main, demolition of old sophomore and administrative annex, renovation of the Octagon building, which is currently underway, demolition of the old police courts, policing courts building, new parking lot construction, proposed purchase of the new administrative annex, which we'll be bringing that to you soon. So all of those projects are on the list. Now the two projects that require additional revenue are the new middle school project and the Old Main renovation. Those are the two projects that require additional revenue. And the way that we generate that additional revenue is through a millage request to the voters. So what that turns out to be. So what we've got in there is $15 million on the estimated renovation of Old Main, and then $64 million on the estimated cost of a new middle school. And so you're asking about what can be done if the millage is passed. It
Right.
depends on the millage rate that you choose to request of the voters, number one. And then number two, when we have to get into the costing of those things. So what we have now are estimated figures, but we have to get with construction companies, and we have to get a hard number on the middle school project. We have to get hard numbers on the Old Main renovation. So we'd get hard numbers on all of these figures. And then that would be the prioritized. We feel like our estimated numbers are good numbers, but until you get those hard numbers from the construction companies, it's hard to delineate past the new middle school and the renovation of Old Main as to what else we could afford to do. I would think that the priority of the board, from what I've heard in past conversations, the direction that I think you all have given is middle school and Old Main as our
Priority.
top two priorities. So that would be our goal, is to make sure we could get those two projects done.
I feel like the middle school and Old Main are like unfinished business.
Yes.
Agreed.
Good way
Yes.
to say
I
it.
really do.
And even with over at the, I can't remember what, that auditorium that we had a chance to go in and look at.
The middle school.
Was that the sixth grade campus portion?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's horrible. I mean, it's dilapidated. So, I mean, something has to be done. I mean, it's not even usable. You can't even put students in there. I wouldn't even put the ghost in there.
And
Christmas past.
That building is the first stage of demo
Yeah,
that
okay.
we were talking about tonight. So
mean, this stuff
that
falling
complex would be what would be demoed, and that would be the 7th and 8th grade. That's the proposed 7th and 8th grade new location.
Yeah, okay.
I don't think, I'm sorry, were you finished?
Yeah, I was just gonna say too, I mean, just going back and listening to the old main, you know, as far as working on, starting that project first and then maybe moving the kids there and kind of just going through and demoing and we're rebuilding may be a good idea to look at too. Now, that trailer over there in the parking lot, that may not be a bad idea too, but then trailers are another cost.
Well, I worry about safety and security.
And
being
then,
over
yeah,
there.
that too, and those apartments are back there too, so I don't know.
So
It's a lot to
the
look at.
question we have before us that is sort of driving, you know, our purpose in last week and this week and next week, decision time, is our, you know, future project costs and then our projected revenue, and looking at that difference in your projected revenue and projected expenditures, and our difference was $33.5 million. So that's what's needed to get our two top projects going, and depending on where those costs come in,
You said it was
that allows
33
us to do $33.5 million is the needed funding.
And that's with the caveat of us even being approved for Old Main, which we have not started the paperwork on.
That's correct. On the projected revenue, we have a $5 million line that next to the last line, that would be state partnership funding, and we would be able to make that application because we're proposing that renovation of that space for classrooms.
Does anyone know or remember, did we attempt to do anything with Old Main when we started the 2012 millage process plan? Because I honestly don't remember.
Oh, the often asked question. Was Old Main promised in the last campaign?
Well, I do remember that promise, but I
Okay,
don't
so
remember.
my remembrance is different.
Okay, go ahead.
I've gone back and looked at the book whenever this comes up. If you go back to the original DLR presentation,
Okay,
at the very bottom of it was always a big asterisk
yeah,
that said if funds were left, Old Main would be addressed. But the picture was included in things, it was on the list.
Yep.
And so it was not unreasonable that people thought Old Main was part of it.
Yep.
But in all of the literature that I still have in the file, it's always listed as a project. If there were funds left,
If there were funds left.
it would be done. And when the state did not fund the middle school, and there were some other changes made, you know, Old Main was the first thing that was eliminated, and then the middle school, because there was not state partnership, was eliminated, and then all the other projects were completed. But I do get that question from time to time, and so I refuse to throw away the file until we get Old Main done.
that's good, that's good.
It's just an urban legend, right?
Well, facts are always nice. I love me some facts.
And we can't do really anything with it because it's in the historic preservation
Yeah, there's some
site,
limitations there, right?
right? So, I mean, it's going to be there, and it's a part of it. And a lot of people feel very strongly that it should be renovated. So.
Renovated and used, I think, is what your committee heard, is what we pretty consistently heard at some of those meetings. You know, there's generations upon generations of North Little Rock residents who attended school there. They have great memories of there. It's, you know, on postcards. When you think of North Little Rock, you get Old Main, you get the mill. I mean, it's one of those things that people associate with the community. And, you know, the end goal has to be for it to be used and preserved, I would think.
Agreed.
Just a hypothetical question around moving, if that was even possible to move middle school students. Our current middle school sits at the 6th grade and the 7th and 8th grade campus, just about 1,500, 1,600 students. Mr. K, you mentioned COE, the sweet spot around 800. Would it even have capacity to put 1,600 students in it?
That's a lot. I don't know that we could get all the campus. I don't think we could get all the campus there.
I didn't think so either. I wasn't. Thank you.
Do we know the capacity number? I thought it was around 14, 15. That's why I inquire. Which is close, but no dice. I understand. It's
Yeah,
not
we're
the
about-
entire total. But it was,
I can speak to that back during construction of the high school when I was principal at Old Main. That's why we had to use
Sophomore camp.
campus.
Right.
As when we had 2 grades, we had 11th and 12th grade on Old Main, we still had portables that we had to bring in to service those students. Then we had 9th and 10th grade that were over at the sophomore campus. So I think we could not get,
All of the middle
we
school.
couldn't
in-
service all of this,
Gotcha.
the middle school without additional support buildings
Gotcha.
brought in.
that's fair.
There'd be a-
I
The-
do, I'm sorry, were you
I was just gonna say, there'd be a lot of buses, and a lot of commotion up there with all those students
Just
and the
a
high
couple.
school students too. That could be
Yeah,
a problem.
It could be that you use Old Main for 6th grade, 6th grade, and that would free up, that may accelerate if you're only having to navigate 7th and 8th grade. At the current location, you're able to relocate 6th grade, that may accelerate. That's something that Taggart could,
Or maybe just 8th grade.
or just 8th grade.
Yeah, I was thinking one grade
One
at a
grade.
time, then you could work on that building.
8th would
But
make sense.
Old Main is not ready, so how could we even?
That's true. That's true.
that.
It's not.
Where we are with capital savings.
Our balance is at 25 million right now. We actually have a fund balance of 27 million, but we have a $2 million purchase happening on a roof repair and some other repairs that are encumbered in that. So we have some funds that are spoken for that the board has approved those expenses. So when you back those out, on the board report, you may see 27 million, but the unencumbered balance, the encumbered balance is a little bit less because of some expenses that have been booked but haven't happened yet. So it's 25 million as of August.
Are those the 6.6 million for contingencies? Is that basically for the middle school and or Old Main, or does that have anything to do with the demo things too?
Any,
I don't know
any
how
of
that was
those-
calculated. Or
That it was, that's a portion that we'd put down there for a contingency for any of those projects. So if there are savings from a particular project, it would go into that contingency line to draw if there are contingencies, if there's change orders or things, when we go to cost things, from costing to construction, if there's an increase in price, it would help offset those.
Man. So at the end of the day, we can plan and hope and pray and everything, but unless the voters give a millage, say yes to a millage, all of this is moot. I
Well,
mean,
the two,
honestly, right?
the two main projects are moot points. We would not be able to fund
Middle school or Old Main.
the middle school or Old Main.
Which, Brian, gets us to the options. Would it be okay to just?
Yep.
Go ahead, Ms. Warren. I didn't want to stop, but I think we're there.
Yep.
When you
I
said
agree.
millage,
Yep.
then we're back to the 3 options, I think, or potentially a 4th.
Yes, and just to recap, 1 mill in North Little Rock generates around 876,000 in annual revenue. So then we have the 3 options that we discussed at our last board meeting. Now, we've talked about the 2.6 mil line and it says for North Little Rock Middle School, but it's for the middle school and the other projects that we had listed on there, with North Little Rock Middle School being the flagship project. So the 2.6 mil line for new projects, and then we've also discussed the board's desire to invest in salary schedules for employees. And we looked at what we discussed at the last meeting was we generally compare ourselves to some of the bigger schools around us. And when you compare ourselves and what they can pay and you really drill down into their source of revenue, there are some surrounding schools that have additional M&O mills that are approved by voters and on the books, which generates additional funding for them to be able to invest in teacher salaries. So what we've got here are three options. The 2.6 mills is what we have calculated as our need to generate the revenue to cover the $33.5 million deficit for projects. And then the difference in the three options will be the M&O request from voters as well. So option 1 has that 3 mill line for operation. Option 2 has a 2 mill line for operations. Option 3 has 0 mills for operation. So that's where we are at this point. And Mr. Beardsley, would you like to?
No, that's a great summary.
I think in addition, though, I think that the plan is also important. That people, I think it would be personally less attractive if when people hear it's 4 years. I mean, you got a lot of people say, "What? You have to be in the 4th grade to even experience going to the middle school, because you're in the 5th grade. You'll be in high school before the school is even built." So, as we look at it, I think the plan is important once you present it to people. If you say that we make them pull this off in 2 years, I think that would sound a lot better. So I think how we do it is just as important as what we're doing it for. And the time is important.
Okay. Next, Miss Valley.
What does that M&O stand for? I can't remember.
Maintenance and operation. That's the money you use to pay anything that's not debt. So whether it's teacher salaries, whether it's your utilities, buying buses, buying computers, it's the regular operations of the school district.
Okay, Ms. Walker.
Trying to gather my thoughts to be nicely said. I feel like I'm fine with this. I know we need it. I see the need. I know we need it. Put it to the voters. Let the voters decide. I think we learned something from the LEARNS Act that they wanted their opinion on that. So I would like to give them their opinion, yes or no, on this matter.
That makes sense.
My concern of that is we are paying for the sins of the past. And because we are paying for the sins of the past, of what happened from the first millage, we do have projects that seem to be undone, unfinished. And I understand the asterisk. I get it. It's the fine print, right? We all should read the fine print. I get that. But I fought tooth and nail for that millage back in 2012 as well. And so let the voters decide, but I would like for them to have that option to say yes or no.
They'd have that if we put it on the ballot. Are you
Mhm.
saying you want to send out some surveys? Is that what you're saying, or?
It's always an option, but the more that we give the survey an option, not to take it away from them, but that's going to eat up the time frame. And I am aware of the deadline, and I'm aware of, remind me, it was November if we were going to do it immediately, if you will,
Correct.
and then March after that, and
For
then
the-
November after that, right?
Yes.
Okay, just make sure I have my time frames. So we're not sneaking anything in this year on the ballot. It's just a matter of we are time sensitive for the funding that we are trying our best to get from the state that they approved, but yet it has an asterisk as well, and we need to make sure we are paying attention to that fine print.
Yeah, and the school's going to have an election in November of '23, regardless of whether or not the millage increase is on there. It's your required annual election. Just the timeline we find ourselves up against is that because you just found out from the state that the middle school was approved, that you have to make the decision at next week's board meeting in order to follow the correct process to give the county time to put the ballots together and what you're going to ask for at the November election.
That's fair.
So we have to decide on the millage next week?
So the board has already passed the proposed budget for 24-25 and set the millage that is going to be on the November of 23 ballot. And you voted to have no millage change. So if the board wants to do something differently, then at next week's meeting, you have to rescind that millage proposal and vote for what you want to have on the ballot. But in order to meet the deadline, it's got to run in the newspaper before the end of August to get the correct number of days before November and give the voters notice. So we find ourselves in the place that you've got to vote at next week's meeting if you want to change what's on the ballot in 2023. If you don't want to do that, then the board takes no action. It remains as no millage change, and then you have until basically Thanksgiving to decide if you want to have a special election in March of 24, or you want to just wait until your regular election in November of 24.
Yeah.
Okay.
In my opinion is
You said that 24, Mr. Steele.
yes, ma'am, I did. And
Okay.
that's still my opinion because I really think that's rushed. I think if you do something like this, you have to have the community on board up front. I think you need time to go around and explain this is what we're trying to do, like you all did, and let people have an opportunity to look at it. One of the things, just be real. One of the things that we have been criticized of is transparency issues and so forth. If you don't have, you talk about a millage increase, if you don't have the city leadership on board, the business community on board, that's tough. And it's a tougher sell to say, well, we've already approved it. It's going to be on the ballot. Now can you come help us? If you look at what happened in Pine Bluff, they really took their time and kind of, from what I know about it, I have several friends there. They got the mayor on board, and it was kind of a deal. Well, we're going to consolidate two of the high schools and build you one new high school. And if we do that, then the business community will get behind and so forth. I'm not sure in a week that gives us enough time to do our due diligence that I think we need to do to get people on board, explain all of these options, and really to get that support. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Val?
I have a question for those of you that participated in that campaign. How long did y'all have on that last millage? Did you do it like over
Mr.
6
Bearsman
months?
can answer that for you.
Well, we had a special election, and it was in February. It was on Valentine's Day. You know, if you love North Little Rock, come vote yes. But you know, the board had multiple public hearings and forums in November, December, January. You know, people in the community came out and supported it. We would definitely be operating on a compressed timeline. You would have September and October to explain to the voters why you're asking for a millage increase and get their support behind it. And it's a little bit of a trade-off like we talked about last week. If you go for the compressed timeline, you will be the only question on the ballot in November of 23. So if people hear what you have to say, we're not competing against paid political campaigns. If the board feels like, you know, let's do some surveys of our community, let's talk to business leaders and the mayor, and we'd like to have from now until November to make that decision, or until August, then both of the election options we have in 24 will be presidential primary and the general presidential election. So we'll have great voter turnout. We just have to have a very concerted effort that people hear what the district is asking for and understand it, and that they don't just go into the voting room and read that it says for tax and against tax and make a decision based on that. We hope they understand what the district is asking for and what you hope to do with the increase. So it's a trade-off, and for those who say that the district, hasn't been transparent, I would just point back that your first workshop on this was in February, and we've been talking about it at multiple school board meetings. In May, when you didn't receive the middle school funding, the district said we're putting everything on pause. Mr. Tessman pointed out you may get funded because you're right at the line, and that did occur. It's just unfortunate that we didn't find out, till the very end of July, and now you have the month of August to make the decision. But that's really why y'all get paid the big bucks, and I just get here to answer questions and point out all the problems.
I have one more question, and that would be, is there any way that we can swing doing the middle school ourselves? If you just look at the money that we have on hand with the $18 million from the savings of the refinancing of the bonds, right? You can,
We gonna be
Mr.
broke.
Brown's just shaking his head no at me.
Yeah, my math says no.
No,
also.
it will take additional revenue for us to be able to fund that middle school project.
And let's say we do go to the voters and the voters say yes, and we pass, let's just say you say 2.6 mils is what we need
For
to do
projects.
the middle school or everything.
Everything if, with the caveat, with the asterisk, all the construction costs come in where we're projecting. So if there's not an outlier and we are able to cost out all the projects that were on that list at the dollar that's on the list, yes, we could do all the projects for the 2.6 mils. So when you line up revenue and expenses, the difference is $33.5 million. The 2.6 mils generates that revenue for us. So it is, we feel good, I feel good about the project list and the costs that we have on there. But there are, market increases, construction cost increases. So if there are any outliers that could affect some of those smaller if we have to not do a smaller project to get our 2 flagship projects done, that may be a call that we have to make. But
So we absolutely, positively cannot do it. Just the middle school, not including the other things, just the middle school with the money that we have.
no, it's a $60 million project. We have $20 million from the state.
We short.
We can't go it alone.
We
We
broke.
cannot go that alone.
Okay.
Okay.
I want to ask, did Ms. West, did you have something to say? I apologize.
That's okay. I was just gonna say that we do need to maybe have, I don't know how we can do it with, at the point where we're trying to open up schools and all that kind of stuff, but we do need to get the community involved in it as far as their opinions. And I just don't know where we'll put those dates, and we have to have a decision made by what date again?
Your next board meeting,
Oh,
a week from today.
so there's no time for that.
Well, I have a follow-up question to that when you're done.
Okay, so that's what I was, because you have to put in the paper and all that kind of stuff, right? Okay, so I do think that I don't know, some kind of way we're gonna have to try to talk. I don't know if we need to do surveys amongst the other stuff that they're being sent out at this moment. But we do need to talk to our public, definitely our communities. I agree with that, Ms. Steele.
Okay. All right.
Can I ask a question when you're done? When you're done, Madam
Pete
President.
has Dr. Pete has a question.
So just to clarify, Mr. Beardsley, so what I'm gathering is the Board of Education really has, the first decision they have to make is if they're going to go for a millage, is it going to be in November of 2023? If not November of 2023, March of 2024. If not March of 2024, November of 2024.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Then once that's determined, then they would have to go back to their 3 options here and then choose one of those, which would go on the ballot. So just for my own, just to remember, so if it's on the March 2024 ballot, the board would have to vote on that by November of 2023?
Yeah, pre-Thanksgiving. And this is one of those quirky things. 2024 is a presidential election year. And
Correct.
the state of Arkansas has moved forward your May election to March. And there's a new state law that requires almost 90 days notice the school district has to give the election commission instead of 60 days. And so the combination of those two things means that it pushes your decision into pre-Thanksgiving in order to notify the election commission that you plan on having a special election and asking for a millage during the March presidential primary. If the board goes for the longest period of prep and wants to wait until November of 2024, then 90 days prior to that, it would have to be run in the paper and make your decision. So
Gotcha.
sometime probably in your regular July board meeting.
So my last follow-up question would be then that would mean we would have about 3 months, so if it's August, September, October, November, to basically educate the community on all the things that we're learning here, what the options are, all of that, versus making a decision next week, it's on the ballot, and then all of that. So I got that correct?
Yes, sir.
That would be the minimum 3. If you go into November 2024, then
You've got 9
we would
months.
have to, right, we'd have 9 months, because we'd have to be in August of 2024, a year from now, to vote on that, the board would, for it to be on the November 2024 election.
Yes, and I'm just, the only thing I say is you're going to do it in July because it's a
Or July.
presidential year and you've got to do
July.
90 days rather than 60.
Okay.
So essentially, we have the difference between 3 months to educate the public around this versus 9.
Right.
Thank you.
1 week,
Mr.
3 months.
Yes, sir.
5 months.
Yes, sir.
Still, I see your hand.
Yes, ma'am. I'll wait on you. Go ahead.
Okay, I was just gonna say, when we were doing this before, you're gonna have to, since I know Little Rock and out at North Rock, I lived here, I know the culture, we're gonna have to, we had 124 meetings when we were trying to build these schools. We had to go to every neighborhood. But we had community leaders who went out themselves, who had came in, it wasn't just the board, who came in, and what did you call those people, Mr. Brown, when King and this
You
young
formed
man would
we called
go?
it a Blue Ribbon Task Force.
Right.
Mr. King and others were on that and really became the advocates for the school district. And they hosted a number of the meetings so that you as school board members were there in the audience to answer questions after the meeting. But really, they took the lead in presenting those, whether it was the Rotary Club, Kiwanis, church groups, POAs, and then there were times board members filled in for some of the smaller meetings. But that Blue Ribbon group both raised money for the signs and the social media and then led a number of the public meetings.
See, this is what I'm saying, when we are looking at this, we first have to find those community leaders who will assist and advocate, because they may know what we want, but what we're saying, it's what the community wants. They are the total stakeholders. I guess I'm saying this to say, what, Mr. Beardsley? I can worry about March 24th of 24, but for as I said, I don't want for the board to sit up here and make a decision, and I did not have not recognized the stakeholders in this city, and they haven't heard enough about it. That's just my opinion.
I agree.
And fair and equitable. And we can have it, but until they are involved And we have searched out and found some advocates for us, because the school board, as you told us last 2 weeks ago, we cannot use our money for campaign. It has to be on the outside.
I'll let you use your money, you know, individually. You
Yes.
can speak individually, you can support it individually, but we can use no taxpayer money to
That's right.
influence the outcome.
And what
So-
is our deadline, Mr. Tessman, on letting the state know? Do we have time? I mean, I'm making the assumption that we're good. We're gonna have our timeline for November 2024, if that's what we choose, if that's what we hope to do. Are we still good with the state with our asterisk on the money?
Yes, we can request a waiver at any time with any one of these deadlines, as long as you have extenuating circumstances that are justifiable, and I believe a millage would be justifiable, but we still have to ask them.
Okay.
Because,
I don't say yes until someone signs it and mails it, and I receive it.
I understand. So when's our time frame for us to file for that waiver?
Oh, they're just before the deadline happens. I mean, we
When
could.
is the deadline?
We have, the 4 years for the completion of the project. First deadline we'd want to do if you haven't already obtained an architect or an engineer would be the 18-month deadline for, that's what's considered construction, beginning of a construction. That deadline is 1/20/2025.
Okay.
so, Mr. Beardsley, since you heard what I said and we have heard what you said, because you remember everything,
He's that good.
I don't want to be in a hurry, because, and the reason I'm saying this, I want us to have what we need, and then we'd have to decide on option 1, 2, and 3. The community would. I don't want to sit here and, as these 7 board members saying, oh yeah, we're gonna go do this. No, we're not.
Right.
We have got to involve the community with this. And you, with your direction and remembering everything, we know we want to do it. If we decide when we want to do it, we will need your direction to tell us step by step what we need to do in the involvement of the community as you did before.
And I'm glad to help, and I think Mr. Steele and a number of you, already have a sense of who you need to talk to, who we need to have conversations with, and I'm glad to be a resource to you. But, you guys are the respected members of the community. People care about what you have to say. You have relationships with, other stakeholders, and, you would be the front line. The rest of us are your resource.
But see, once the information get out there, there won't be any questions. They'll know. We know there will be those who do not desire it, but if we push hard and we can really show them that we love North Rock and we are working with them, I want to be transparent from the top up, transparent. And that's the only way we can be successful in North Rock.
Very good.
Because we have a lot of senior citizens and they may be settled and no longer working, and when you look at that little small fee they'll be paying on their homes, to them that's a big deal. And this is why I want a total investment of the community in what we're trying to do. Ms. Valerie McLean, you sitting over there shaking your head. What, Reverend Steele?
You asked exactly what I was going to ask.
Okay. And Ms. West?
I'm good. I mean, we need to, just plan it out right and do it right the first time, and then just kind of take some time on it. I'm cool with that. But we definitely have to talk to our community.
Amen.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Superintendent, if you're getting the impression from the board that they do not want to consider anything at next week's
That was
board
going to be my
meeting,
next question
then
is.
the great
this
answer is we don't have to do anything. You've
Correct.
already taken care of the November of '23 election. You've already published that there will be no changes in the taxes, and it does not need to be on your agenda. And you can continue the process in establishing who you want to talk to, how you want to get feedback, and we can have that conversation once school gets started. And I know next week's a big week for you.
It is. So just to clarify the board, you want to table this? You don't want anything on the agenda for next week?
No.
Agreed.
Agreed.
I just want to make sure I got clarity.
Agreed.
Point of clarity on that for me.
All right.
And I agree with the whole discussion as well. So from this point then up to November of 2023, when we engage our stakeholders in the same information and in the same dialogue, because I remember in the last conversation you said you can put information out to provide information, you can't influence. Since we're not at a point of going for a millage, if we do any information, I'm just using the word marketing or communication, can we use that in operating of just having this conversation or market materials that just talks about options versus
All right, so I'm going to use my asterisk again for Ms. Wonkum. I'm not an attorney, so I'm not giving you a legal opinion here. It's general
practice.
For school districts to want to know what parents and community members think about opportunity that the district has. It would be, in my opinion, a normal course of action to say, send out a survey. Are we hearing correctly from our community that a new middle school is the #1 priority? Are we hearing correctly from the community that everybody wants Old Main used and educational purpose makes the most sense? Are we hearing correctly from you that you want us to, whatever it is, it would be normal for you to do surveys, to ask your PTA presidents to have that included, and that would all be normal business.
Or present this presentation as an example.
Yes, have the architect come at an open house and go through it at the middle school. Let all the middle school parents see the pictures and say what they like and don't like
Gotcha.
about it.
Gotcha.
All of those kind of things, even if I'm there and I say, here are the 3 options that we've thrown out there, here's what it would cost you. And somebody says, no, I want 10 mils because I want to be whatever. You know, that's just all normal discussion.
Okay.
It's when we pivot and the board's made a decision and then you're starting to say, vote yes, it's a call to action.
Yes.
That we want to really watch what resources are paying for what information.
And so my last question is then, and just to help me with, if the board, voted for the millage, then it's my understanding there would be a committee or almost like a campaign committee.
Correct.
Then that campaign committee can solicit donations, and then that committee can hire a marketing firm, as an example, to inform. The school district cannot use any operating funds at that point to inform.
You can inform. It would be normal operation for you to say, here's when our election is, here's what we're asking, here's what we're going to spend the money on. That's information. In fact, you would be expected probably to do that. But the moment you say vote yes, and I've even heard a few attorneys say it becomes an emotional appeal rather than information. We just want to stick to the facts, and it's up to the voters to say yes or no. If the Blue Ribbon Committee wants to have pictures of the flooding in the middle school and show kids up to their ankles in it or whatever,
Sure.
that sort of emotional appeal, then let them do that. The
I see.
district is going to be strictly
Information.
Information.
I got you. I'm more clear now. Thank you.
I'm thinking, anyone else board members have anything to ask of the committee while they're sitting here?
No, ma'am.
Do you think we've covered everything, those who were online listening? Okay, if not,
Madam President, at that point, we'll move into, we only have 2 quick action items.
okay.
Want to thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you for your input.
Madam President, members of our Board of Education, action item 6.1, superintendent recommends the employment of personnel as discussed in executive closed session.
Madam President,
Yes.
I so move that we accept the employment of personnel recommended by Dr. Polisky.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we accept the recommendation of the hiring personnel. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, so the motion is carried.
Madam President, members of our Board of Education, the last action item is 6.2. Superintendent recommends the legal transfers as presented to the board.
6.2.
Madam President,
Yes.
I so move that we accept the legal transfers.
Second.
It has been moved and properly seconded that we accept the legal transfers 6.2. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, so the motion is carried.
Madam
Madam Chair.
President,
Yes.
Madam Chair, I so move that we adjourn.
second.
It has been moved and properly seconded that we adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None.